Hi everybody. In chapter 19 of my novel Living Nightmare, Tobin was called into Dr. Dawson's office because Dr. Owens had some questions regarding the questionnaire that he had her fill out. He wasn't very happy with some of the answers she gave. Then, Tobin had to deal with someone stealing her secret diary. Though she found them after, she still believes that someone took them. So I'll be reading chapter 20. The nothing greeted me like a friend I hadn't seen in years. I have a strange relationship with it. Sometimes I crave it, needed to stop the ropes of insanity from tightening around my neck. The reprieve it provides me, for there are no cries, just a sea of black. However, sometimes the lack of color reminds me I am alone. Dream Journal. Tobin woke from the nothing, confused and groggy. It was the middle of the night. She rolled onto her back, waiting for her eyes to adjust to the curtain of darkness. What woke her? A noise. Her senses heightened. Something felt off. It had broken her from a slumber state to full wakefulness. Her stomach rolled. A rustling sound masked by humming had the fine hairs on Tobin's arms standing in alarm, little warriors warning her their queen of enemies gaining ground. Her breathing quickened. She covered her mouth with a hand to keep from making any sound. Someone was in the room. She whimpered reflexively, but it was muffled by her hand. Who was in here? The person moved closer. Fight or flight? Tobin wanted to choose flight, but how far would she get? Should she say something? Scream? The night nurses wouldn't react to her screaming. They were too used to that happening whenever she had a nightmare. Tobin squeezed her eyes shut. Her heart threatened to beat its way out of her body when she sensed someone hovering over her. Don't do it, she told herself. Her breath froze. She opened her eyes and gasped. Shock was barely a spark before temper took over. Hannah, what the hell? Hannah leaned down until they were within an inch of bumping noses. Death waits, she said. Tobin's heart stopped before speeding up again, faster than before. She sat up, forcing Hannah to move away. What are you doing? She stared at her roommate in angry confusion. But wait. Hannah? No response came. Hannah didn't even blink. There was no expression on her face. She was an eerie doll. The sight should have calmed Tobin's anger. It was obvious that Hannah was in one of her trances, but instead it heaped on the frustration. These lost moments were becoming more frequent, and adding death threats into the mix was not okay. Something had to be done. Hey! Voice sharp with impatience, Tobin snapped her fingers on Hannah's face. She raised her voice and tried again. Hannah jumped, startled awake. She blinked at Tobin with a frown. Tobin? What's going on? The look on Tobin's face had Hannah taking a seat. Her mouth quivered when she asked, Was I sleepwalking? There was a touch of fear in her eyes. It cooled Tobin's temper. Tobin pursed her lips. You don't know? I remember going to bed. Why? Did I do something weird? She chewed a thumbnail. I didn't do anything embarrassing, did I? Tobin drew her knees to her chest. No, she hedged. I'm not sure. I think you might have been sleepwalking. You woke me up. She wished it wasn't so dark in the room. She wanted to see Hannah's face better. You don't remember anything? Hannah shrugged. No. Maybe? She went back to her bed. Tobin heard the mattress springs creaking as she got into the covers. Do you sleepwalk often? It's happened twice now, Tobin said, then winced. Sorry. You wouldn't know, right? Hannah snorted. Yeah, amnesia blows. There was a pause. Maybe that's what I was doing when that cop found me. Sleepwalking? You think that's possible? Maybe? Tobin waited a moment before pushing on. Hannah? Will you tell Dr. Dawson? No. I don't want him to give me more drugs. It's not like I hurt anyone. Right. Other than scaring the crap out of me. You won't say anything? No. It was probably stupid of her, she knew. But she couldn't do that to Hannah. Thanks. Hannah's relief was palpable. You're not so bad, you know. Tobin smiled. Good night, Hannah. Night. It was a long time before Tobin could fall asleep. She couldn't get Hannah's words out of her head. Death waits. That's what Hannah had said. Death waits. Whose death? Tobin's eyelids were sandpaper dry in the morning. She got about 2 hours of sleep after the Hannah incident. The lack of sleep wasn't new. It was the agitation over Hannah's increasingly odd behavior that left her crabby when the sun woke her. She rubbed the bottoms of her palms against her eyes and groaned. She needed to convince Hannah to talk to someone. Lifting her head from her pillow, she glanced at Hannah's bed. It was empty. Crap. She had hoped to talk to her today before breakfast. Tobin huffed with defeat. Maybe it was good that Hannah was gone. She wasn't sure how she would broach the subject, and Hannah kept pretending nothing was wrong. Sliding her feet into the slippers waiting by the bed, Tobin put her hair in a bun and headed for the nurse's station where she took her meds. She found Hannah standing with the other female patients waiting to shower. Sometimes being feared was a good thing, she decided, when no one protested her cutting them off in order to stand behind her roommate. Hannah looked at Tobin. Tired? She hid a yawn behind her hand. A little. With a shrug of nonchalance, she added, I'm used to not sleeping through the night. Hannah gave her a weak smile. In the bathroom, they separated, each heading towards an available stall to shower. Tobin let the rain of tepid water wash the sleep from her body. She let out a heavy sigh that felt like it had been pulled from her toes to her shoulders, stripping stress and tension as it escaped her mouth. She rolled her shoulders and concentrated until the chattering of the nurses and the off-key singing was muted. A few rounds of deep inhalation had her shoulders dropping as calmness melted the anxiety from her muscles. A face flashed before her eyes. Lavender eyes. Unblinking. Hannah's. A gasp snapped her eyes open. Had the sound come from her? She pressed a hand against the tightness in her chest and fought a wave of dizziness. What the hell was that? She scrubbed her face, blinking drops of water from her eyes. Was she so tired that she'd fallen asleep in the shower? She pressed the pads of her fingers to her temples. A nap was in her immediate future. If her fingers were shaking, it was only because the water turned cold. You'd think they'd make the food more appealing, Hannah said, tapping a triangle of toast against her plate. The hard bread made a thunking sound. Tobin winced. They were at breakfast, seated at a half-occupied table. Tobin rolled the sleeves of her shirt to her elbows and gazed at her meal choice with regret. She smothered 2 undercooked eggs from under a river of ketchup, hoping it would make them more tolerable. Frowning, she scooped up a forkful of scrambled eggs into her mouth and gagged. Cold egg, she thought sarcastically. My favorite. Hannah nibbled on the end of her toast. A gob of strawberry jam fell onto the table. How do you ruin toast? Tobin swallowed. The eggs went down like slime. Nope, the ketchup didn't help. She drank half her glass of orange juice before answering. Don't know. Maybe you should ask them. She angled her head to the left, where the cooks kept narrowed eyes on the people in line. The woman had beach blonde hair trapped under her hairnet. Her husband was a good foot shorter than her and was stick-thin to her boxer physique. He had no hair on his head, but a braided beard covered the bottom half of his face, reaching down to the middle of his chest. Hannah looked at the couple. Thanks, but I'll pass. Conversation stalled. Tobin searched for her usual mealtime entertainment, Mikey Martin, but he wasn't there. In his place, someone else was people watching, or rather, Tobin watching. Tristan was staring at her. What was his problem? His eyes widened. She thought it was because he'd been caught, but his gaze moved behind her. Tobin looked over her shoulder. Trays in their hands, the twins crossed the room and stepped up to his table. The moment they sat, Tristan was up. He grabbed his uneaten food and scurried away. Weird. Tobin met the eyes of the twins. They seemed surprised and confused. One of them shrugged his shoulder a half second before the other. Unease traced a finger up her spine. Less than 2 minutes passed before Nurse Tiffany approached the twins. Tobin noticed Nurse Joe hovering close by. Here we go again, Hannah said, noticing Tobin's interest. Tiffany's face was painted in sympathy as she spoke to the twins. Their faces flushed red with anger. They didn't like what she was saying. Though Tobin couldn't hear the conversation, she knew it wasn't going well. One of the twins seemed to argue, slamming his hands on the table. Joe was at Tiffany's side, a second later, crossing his big arms. More talking. One of the twins stood up, collected his tray, and followed Joe to another table, stomping as he went. Why can't they sit together? What's the big deal? Tobin shook her head. No clue, but they sure do not like them hanging out together. Ange would have known. Tobin rolled her eyes, half smiling. Yes, indeed. Ange would have said something like, the twins started off as one person but got split in half. At least Hannah's answer was honest. Still, Tobin glanced at one twin, then the other. Ange would have loved to have met the twins. Why hadn't she written lately? Hannah was watching the twin with Joe. Maybe they're too codependent. Ever his scowling self, Joe randomly grunted when the twin spoke to him. Tobin wondered how he can carry a conversation with 2-word responses. Maybe. You got to admit, they are kind of creepy. Talking and walking at the same time. Tobin studied the twin with Tiffany, Tobin studied the twin Tiffany was trying to talk to. He ignored her. I wonder what it's like being a twin. Identical ones, too. Imagine the pranks you could pull. Mischief lightened Hannah's words. Tobin chuckled. Maybe, she allowed. But how frustrating would it be getting mistaken for your twin? Sharing your face with someone else? Never knowing if someone wanted you or them. Okay there, party pooper. Hannah swatted Tobin on the arm. I still think, minus that, it'd be cool. Tobin pushed her tray away, appetite gone. Hannah was in a good mood. She didn't want to ruin it, but... Bouncing her foot, she peeked at Hannah and bit her lip. Should she? Hannah, about last night. Hannah stilled. What about it? Are you sure you don't want to talk to Dr. Dawson? Why bother? What can he do about it? I don't know. I'm just worried. What if you get hurt when you're sleepwalking? I'm fine. Hannah got to her feet. You promised not to tell. Of all people, I thought you'd understand. Tobin winced, watching Hannah stalk off. Crap, she didn't mean to upset her. Guilt brought her to her feet. She needed to apologize. Tobin was halfway to the exit when Tiffany stopped her with a hand on the arm. It was time for her first hypnotherapy session. Tiffany offered to return Tobin's tray and dishes while she skedaddled off to her session, removing any chance of procrastinating. Tobin toyed with pretending not to know about the session when Dr. Owens met up with her in the hallway. "Tobin, wonderful timing," he smiled. "I was coming to get you." "This way, please." He walked off, not checking to see if she obeyed. She glowered at his back and dragged her feet. Nerves knotted her stomach. What was he going to do to her? She wiped sweat from her forehead. Tobin counted her steps. Each was assigned a worry to lock away. Being vulnerable, losing control, having her secrets bared to strangers. She gathered each fear and shoved it into a box. The boxes were taped and put behind a door, to be opened when she was ready to deal with them. That is the end of chapter 20 to my novel, Living Nightmare, which is the first book to the Other Side of Gifted series. Next week, it'll be chapter 21. I hope that you're liking the story, and I hope to see some of you on October 5th at the Author Fest, which is the fundraiser for the birthing center at the Lakeshore General Hospital. Till then, have a great week. Goodbye and take care.